Gita. And I made some introductory remarks about the Bhagavad Gita. 18 chapters, but the first chapter it just sets the stage. The teachings do not really start in the first chapter. So we will not be doing the first chapter. We all know, those who have studied the Bhagavad Gita, that in the first chapter, it sets the stage for this great teaching. The two groups of the same clan, the Pandavas and the Kauravas, the same dynasty actually, in ancient India, they are engaged in civil war. The Pandavas, to sort of oversimplify, the Pandavas are the good guys and the Kauravas are the bad guys. And Arjuna is one of the 5 Pandava brothers. And Krishna, who is an incarnation of God, an avatara. Krishna is his driver, chauffeur. He drives Arjuna's chariot in this great battle. And before the battle begins, Arjuna asks Sri Krishna that take me out there in the middle of the 2 arrayed armies. I want to see who's foolish enough to come and fight with me. He's full of bravado and confidence. But once he goes there and he sees all his relatives, because it's a civil war, so the people they're going to fight are their own relatives, 2 factions of the same royal house. And so he has great qualms about the battle which is about to ensue, though it is a righteous war, because the Kauravas are really nasty guys. Now Arjuna says that maybe we shouldn't fight this war. I don't want to fight this war. I want to give up and withdraw from this war. And now Sri Krishna is going to engage him to do his duty. And so starts the teaching. Remember, the teaching is ostensibly about a civil war fought a long time, in prehistoric times in India. But it's not really about a civil war. It's not really about some princes of different royal houses fighting a war. What use or interest would that be to us? What it is really about is our spiritual battle. Each one of us has to fight this battle of life daily. Everyone has this challenge facing. It could be a challenge to get along with difficult people every day. It could be a difficult job. It could be a bad financial situation. It could be ill health. It could be loneliness. It could be whatever, or a combination of all these factors. And all of us at different times in life, this is the battle which faces us. Every day you wake up in the morning, this is the battlefield in front of us. This is what actually Sri Krishna is speaking about. So his message, his spiritual teaching is an eternal teaching. It is immediately applicable to us, each one of us. In fact, one of the great Swammis in the past, in our order, he was a very great teacher of Vedanta, Bhaskareshwarananda, who founded the Ramakrishna Math in Nagpur. Yes, Nagpur. I never saw him, but from all our seniors, those who saw him, he was evidently a remarkable teacher. So they maintained notes, handwritten notes of his teachings. And I had access to some of those notes. Remarkable. The notes of the first class on the Bhagavad Gita. He taught it many times. So on one of these cycles, the first class he gave on the Bhagavad Gita. And so this is how he starts off. He tells those who were around sitting in the class were young monks, the novices. He tells them, remember these 3 things when you study the Gita. First, I have come here because I need it. Keep the need, the purpose vibrating. In Sanskrit, prayojanam. Keep the purpose of this study vibrating in your heart. Why am I here? Why am I listening to the Gita? I need it. It will be of great help, strength, peace, wisdom for me. That's why I need it. That's why I am here. So that the exact words he said was, keep the prayojanam vibrating in your mind. Prayojanam is the need, the benefit, the purpose that should be vibrating in the mind when we study. Not that I'm always thinking about it, then you won't listen to what I'm saying, but it gives me the orientation, the proper orientation, why I'm studying this. The second thing keep in mind is, who is teaching? Who is the teacher? Who is the speaker here? It is Sri Krishna. It's not your philosophy professor. It's not a pandit or a scholar. Not somebody who is airing his or her own particular philosophical opinion. It is an incarnation of the Lord himself who is speaking. It gives it an entirely different dimension, the way we should receive these teachings. If you would hotline to God and ask him, I wish I could talk to God. I want to know what God would say to me. Here is what God would say to you. You'd say, I've said it. Look it up in the Gita. This is what God, not to Arjuna, to me. So remember who's teaching, the second thing, the teacher. It is Sri Krishna. And the third thing is, it speaks to life. So, what does it mean to me? How do I use it in life? That's also something that we should keep in mind. The purpose, keep the need vibrating in mind. There's a place here to sit. You can come up here. Come up here. Could you just make space for? Yeah. Who is teaching and the practical use in my life. What does it mean for me in my life? Yeah. There are, by the way, I mentioned it last time and this time also I'll mention it, there are many, many translations of the Gita available. I was happy to hear that in the summer in Yale University, in New Haven, they had a special course on the Bhagavad Gita. I think a 6-week course was offered by a professor. And they have also started a project to collect all the translations, I think only the English translations of the Bhagavad Gita, all that are available. So they want to have a library of the Gita at Yale University. Just by the way, not that it's directly relevant, just a couple of weeks back, I was in Washington, D.C. There was what they called a Global Gita Convention, and a 2-day convention on the Gita. And more than 1,000 people showed up. So that's interesting. There's a huge hall in George Mason University in Washington, D.C. Now, there are many, many translations of the Gita available. And I'm informed by our book sales counter here that here itself we have several translations available. I would recommend these. Swami Tapasyananda's Gita. If you don't have a Gita already, many of you already have it, but just take a look after the class. This is, I think, the best you can get in one volume where you have the original Sanskrit with a transliteration. That means you need not know the Devanagari script to read it. You can read it in the Roman script itself. That's there, and with a very terse but compact but insightful explanation. So Swami Tapasyananda was one of the vice presidents of the order several decades ago, and one of the most profound scholars we had. So his Gita is there. One which I have used often, Swami Swarupananda's Gita, is the smaller one. It just has the original verse and the English word-by-word meaning, and maybe an occasional 1 or 2 lines of notes. So that's the smaller version, Swarupananda's Gita. You can take a look at that. There are many ancient commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita. The one I will rely on over the next years, I don't know how long it will take. I remember in Uttarkashi, a class was starting on Mandukya Karika, which we are doing in Wednesdays. I was not there in the class, but I heard an old tape recording of the class, the first class. And the old Swami who was teaching, somebody in the class asked, how long is this going to take to complete the text? And the Swami said, Well, to complete is not the purpose. The purpose is enlightenment, right? So complete, never say that I'm reading one of my teachers told me, never say I've read the Bhagavad Gita, always say I'm reading the Bhagavad Gita. So the purpose is not to complete it. As long as the breath flows, you're breathing in and out, the class will continue. That means, in Hindi he said, Jab tak swas chalegi, chalegi padhai. As long as the breath is flowing, the class will continue. And another Swami, much less accommodating, he was starting a class on Sanskrit grammar. One of the most boring things you can, except for Pandits. Pandits love it, but everybody else finds it very boring. I hear the same thing about those who have taken Latin grammar. So, Sanskrit grammar. He was starting a class on Sanskrit grammar in Uttarkashi in the Himalayas. And the first class somebody asked, how long is this going to take? And the Swami said, who said that? Leave right now. Just go away right now. Don't come back to the class. No, but here we have a fixed time. This is Manhattan. We can't go on like that. Yes, but so in this duration, I will use many sources. So people ask me, which book are you using? So I will use many sources, especially many ancient commentaries. But the central one which I'll rely on is Adi Shankaracharya's commentary, who wrote this 1400 years ago. There are good English translations available. Two of them are here. Swami Gambhiranandaji's translation. It has the original verse and an English translation of the Sanskrit commentary. The Sanskrit commentary itself is not there in the Gambhirananda edition. There's another translation of Shankaracharya's commentary by Professor Krishna Warrior. It can be ordered on request for those who know Sanskrit. So it has the original Sanskrit and an English translation also. If you want a detailed explanation, long-running commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, I can do no better than to recommend Swami Ranganathanandaji's. That runs to 3 volumes. So that's there. Each verse with a detailed commentary on that. And there are many, many more. Many more. For example, the one I'm holding right now doesn't mean that you're going to start looking for this, because I might hold another one next time you come. So this is, for example, a Gita with the commentary of Sridhar Swami, who was one of the medieval commentators. He wrote a very simple Sanskrit commentary 800 years ago. He is actually well known for his commentary on the Bhagavatam, Srimad Bhagavatam. Anyway, first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, after 18 chapters, the first chapter just sets the stage. Arjuna says, for these reasons, I shall not fight the war. Though he had come there to fight the war, now he says, I won't. I want to quit. And the second chapter onwards, the teaching starts. In fact, the teaching starts with the 10th verse of the second, from the 10th verse onwards of the second chapter. So, in fact, if you look at Shankaracharya's commentary, Adi Shankaracharya's commentary, that starts with the 10th verse of the second chapter. He does not deal with the first chapter, nor with the first 10 verses of the second chapter. After the 10th verse of the second chapter, directly when Sri Krishna starts teaching, he starts his commentary. But we'll start with the second chapter itself. The first chapter, each of the chapters has a name. And each of the names ends with yoga. So for example, second chapter is Sankhya Yoga. The first chapter is called Arjuna Vishada Yoga, the yoga of Arjuna's depression. Depression yoga is, I'm sure it's not a yoga you've heard of. You've heard of all different kinds of yoga. Remember, this yoga is, by yoga we mean here a spiritual path, not downward dog. Not the yoga postures in the asana. That's also a path, but that's the physical part of it. This is a spiritual path, and various paths of spiritual development are taught by Krishna to Arjuna. 18 chapters, each of them is called a yoga, but it does not mean there are 18 yogas. There are many different teachings regarding these yogas across the chapters. But even in one sense, depression, unhappiness, it's not in itself a spiritual thing. Unhappiness in itself is not a spiritual thing. It becomes spiritual. Arjuna transforms his depression, his misery, his unhappiness, his frustration with the situation into a gateway to spirituality. Why? What he does is, he surrenders, he asks Krishna to guide him. Here I am, I'm caught in this terrible situation, I don't know what to do, I am very unhappy, please tell me what I should do. If we do that with our unhappiness, then our unhappiness is a doorway to spirituality. It will lead to spiritual growth and spiritual development. Take it to God. Ask God, I'm unhappy, it's terrible, what can I do now? So, then unhappiness becomes a yoga. Arjuna, it simply means, the word itself comes from Riju, the Sanskrit term Riju. I'll be throwing around Sanskrit terms, but I'll always translate. If I do not translate, you're free to raise your hand and ask me to translate. I remember I used to teach Vedanta in Hollywood in a class, in a small group, in the library there. And there's this gentleman who was a very interesting person. He was totally innocent of Sanskrit. He would sit at the back and he would wildly wave his hands. And I would know that's a flag that I'm giving too much Sanskrit. So I would stop and translate. So Arjuna, the word is related to the Sanskrit Riju, which means straightforward, simple, straightforward. Sri Ramakrishna says, if a person is simple, straightforward, that is a very good spiritual sign. Such persons, you will know that simplicity is a sign that it is the last birth. He has said that. Sharalata means the word, very interesting. The word in Bengali or in Sanskrit or Hindi, saral or sharalata, it means simplicity, it also means straight. Literally, a straight line would be sharal. So, and simplicity also. So Arjuna, the word also has the same etymological root. There is because it's the Gita, it's set in the Mahabharata, and the Mahabharata is literally the greatest story ever told. So once in a while stories will come in, and that's good. So there's a story just preceding the war. Krishna, how did he come to be Arjuna's chariot driver? One day he was taking his usual, the great Indian siesta, the afternoon siesta, Sri Krishna, and the two parties to the war, two sides, Arjuna representing his side, the Pandava side, and Duryodhana, the main villain, representing his side, the Kaurava. They arrived almost simultaneously to Krishna's doorstep to ask for his help in the upcoming war. Now Duryodhana is arrogant. He goes and sits in the comfy chair which happens to be near Krishna's head. And Arjuna, who is full of humility and respect, he goes and sits at the foot of the bed near Krishna's feet. Now it so happens that when Krishna wakes up, he opens his eyes, and whom does he see first? He sees Arjuna. And he says, Arjuna, well, you are here, what do you want? Before Arjuna can say anything, Duryodhana sees that the disaster is going to happen. So he says, wait, just a minute, I'm here. And Krishna looks around. And by the way, I'm not making it up. It's in the Mahabharata itself. I was reading the original verses just yesterday. So he looks back and sees Duryodhana sitting there. And then he launches into this soliloquy. Krishna says to both of them, I do not doubt that you were here first, O Prince Duryodhana, but I also did see Arjuna first. Hence, I shall help both of you. Of course, he wants to help Arjuna. And so you are free to ask me. I offer these two to you. One is my powerful army, because Krishna is also king. It's called the Narayani Sena, the Narayani army. I'm going to offer this army full of well-trained warriors, brave in battle. That's one thing I offer. The other thing I offer is myself, alone, unarmed. I will not fight or kill anybody in this war. I will not pick up a weapon even. Now you choose. I will ask Arjuna to choose first, because the rules are you ask the younger person to choose first. And Arjuna is younger. Now you can imagine Duryodhana, and he would be thinking, oh no. But Arjuna, to his delight, Duryodhana's delight, Arjuna says, I choose you, my lord. And Duryodhana, of course, is delighted. He must have was thinking, what a fool. I've got the army, and Arjuna has got just one person. Krishna, no matter how great, he's not going to fight anyway. So he thinks he has got the better part of the deal, and he leaves happily. Arjuna also leaves happily. But one has chosen God. The other one has chosen the world. And we all know what happened, those who know the story of the war. Wherever, if you have God on your side, always know that you are going to succeed in every respect, especially in the one which matters most, in the spiritual respect. If you have the world on your side, it will slip away from your fingers. It always has. The very word for the world in Sanskrit, jagat, means gacchati, that which goes. Wealth goes, youth goes, power goes, fame goes, health goes. All of it goes because it is jagat, that which goes. So that's how Krishna came to be driving a chariot, Arjuna's chariot. And now Arjuna is seeming to back out of the whole deal. And he says to Krishna, I won't fight because of these reasons. So here it starts the second chapter. The second chapter is called Sankhya Yoga. Just a comment about this before we start. What does Sankhya Yoga mean? Sankhya is the name of a philosophy. But that's not what it means here. Among the 6 orthodox schools of Hindu thought, Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Sankhya, Yoga. Yoga itself is a school of philosophy. Patanjali's yoga system. And then Purva Mimamsa and Vedanta. These are the 6 orthodox schools in one way of classification. Among these 6 is the Sankhya system of philosophy of Kapila. Having said that, that's not what it means here. Here in the second chapter, Sankhya means the path of knowledge, Viveka. To discriminate between, to analyze, to see that in this world that which goes, Jagat, non-eternal world, what is real, what is eternal, what is worth having here, what is worthwhile, what is real, what is finally, what is the goal, what is the whole point of it all. The one who realizes this, to isolate the reality from the unreal, the unchanging from the changing, this is called Viveka. Another name for this is Sankhya. Viveka means to discriminate, to separate. Another name is Sankhya. Basically, Sankhya Yoga here means the way of knowledge. In fact, Sri Krishna's central teaching of the entire Bhagavad Gita is given in the second chapter. What Krishna wants to point out, the teaching about the Atman, who or what we really are, that's the central teaching. Entire Bhagavad Gita. That's given in the second chapter. In fact, the second chapter has 4 parts. First is Arjuna will become a disciple of Krishna. Then Krishna starts teaching. The teaching is in 3 parts. First part is the central part of the teaching, where Krishna tells Arjuna what he is, what we all really are. What's the truth about ourselves and this universe. Second part is the spiritual practices. Third part is Arjuna asks a question. Suppose I become enlightened. This is what you are teaching me. Suppose I do it and I get enlightenment. What difference will it make? It's a very good question. A very specific question. This enlightened person, how is this person different from us? Specifics. How does this person walk and talk and interact with others and so on? So these are the parts of the second chapter. And the teaching is really complete in this second chapter. Complete means the essence. So what are the other 16 chapters? Arjuna asks questions. And those questions you will see are not unnecessary. They are our questions. By the time we have finished the second chapter, we will have that question. And you will immediately see to your amazement and delight, Arjuna asks that question. And so starts another chapter, and another chapter, and another chapter. Somebody was I was joking, that the 18th chapter is the last one because Arjuna has sort of, what's the term? Cottoned on to Sri Krishna's method of teaching. So at the end of the chapter, Krishna is prompting him, do you understand are your doubts clarified? Do you get it? Arjuna says, yes, I get it. I have no more questions, because he knows one more question means one more chapter will start. I'm just joking. So the teaching is complete in 18 chapters, but the essence of the teaching is given in the second chapter. Let's start. You chant along with me. Those who have the text, you can chant along. I'll chant and then you chant after me. Sanjay Uvacha Tam Tatha Kripaya Vishtam Tam Tatha Kripaya Vishtam Ashrupurna Kulekshanam Ashrupurna Kulekshanam Vishidantam Idam Vakyam Vishidantam Idam Vakyam Uvacha Madhusudana Madhusudana. Sanjay, the one who is narrating all this is, remember, all this is like Dhritarashtra, the blind king. If you don't know who the blind king is, what's happening, don't worry. I will not explain that now, because then a lifetime won't be enough, because the Mahabharata is literally the greatest epic. It's a long story. Anyhow, Dhritarashtra, the blind king, is sitting in his court. He wants to know what's happening on the battlefield. He is the father of the Kauravas, the bad guys. So he asks his courtier, Sanjaya, please tell me what happened. And why Sanjaya? Sanjaya has this, blessed by God, blessed by the Vyasa, the divine eye, by which he can see what's going on in the battlefield and report back live, breaking news. So he pioneered that long before CNN and Fox and so on and so forth. So he's the one who's narrating all this. This is what happened. This is what Krishna said. This is what Arjuna said. This is what happened. So he is telling the blind king, to him means who? Arjuna, who is overcome with pity and grieving, with eyes filled with tears and agitated. Madhusudana spoke these words. Madhusudana is Krishna. One thing we have to get used to is, in those days, everybody had many names, different names. So Arjuna is referred to by different names. Arjuna is one name, the most common one, but there are others we shall come across. Krishna has many names. So Madhusudana is one of the well-known names of Krishna. It means the one who destroyed the demon Madhu. So to Arjuna, who was sorrowing, overcome with pity and unhappiness because of what was about to happen, and eyes were full of tears to such an extent that he couldn't see properly. In the first chapter, we saw how his great bow, the Gandiva, has slipped from his hand. And he sits down. He can't even stand. His knees are trembling. He sits down in sorrow. It has like a nervous breakdown. He sits down in the middle of the chariot and unhappy, not willing to continue with what he was going to do. To him, Krishna, Madhusudana, Krishna, spoke these words. Idam Vakyam. One commentator says that, notice how he said these words. Instead of saying, Krishna spoke to Arjuna, Krishna spoke these words. These are literally the first words that Krishna has spoken in the Gita. And they are hammer blows. They are scolding. They are sharp words. In fact, to a person who is confused and shaky and in the midst of almost a nervous breakdown, a reality check, a sudden shock is necessary. And Krishna delivers that in the next two verses. He gives a big shock to Arjuna. You see, Arjuna, when he was saying all these things, that this is bad, we shouldn't fight this war, and let them do what they want. Let's just get away from this place. It will lead to so much destruction, people will die. All of which he had planned for and literally put together an army, all of which was recognized universally to be his duty. Now he's saying, no, this is bad. And why it is bad, he's giving reasons. What happens is, we do not see our weakness as weakness. The mind has a trick which it plays. It disguises our weakness as strength, as righteousness. Because we always have a need to see as ourselves as being in the right. And so we justify it immediately to ourselves. And but we also recognize deep down that we are doing something wrong. So we need support from others. So he trots out his reasons, and he expects Krishna to be sympathetic, to support him. That's why he has said all those things in the first chapter. And he expects Krishna will say, yeah, you're right, let's go home. Let's not fight the war. This was a bad idea to begin with. Krishna does just the opposite. He scolds harsh words in the next two words. So one of the commentators says, look at how it is emphasized. Spoke to Arjuna. Spoke these words to Arjuna. What follows? These lines to Arjuna. I remember a senior monk in our order who told me many years ago when I was a novice. He told me a story about his days as a novice. Many, many years, decades ago, when he was a novice in one of our monasteries, he was unhappy for some reason. And he had this very senior monk whom he looked up to, who lived in a different monastery in Rishikesh. So he would write letters. Those were the days before social media or email or anything like that. So he would write letters. And he wrote in a letter to that very senior monk, Swami, I can't stay in this monastery. I don't like it. People don't like me. I'm unhappy. He used the words, I can't bear it anymore. I can't bear them anymore. I will run away from here. And he wrote that. He expected sympathy. Advice, sympathy. And he told me what he got back was a terrible shock to him, but it was the best thing that happened to him in his life, he said. What did he get back? He got back one of those little postcards where that old Swami had written one line. Just one line. Remember, others are also putting up with you. I can't bear these people anymore. And he wrote back, remember, other people are bearing you, are putting up with you. In Bengali, mone rakhiyo onnora tomaye sojjo korche. And he said, when I read this, it was such a shock that tears came to my eyes. But then I straightened up. And then I put my life together, and see, he's a monk 40 years later also. He's doing very, very well, in fact, extraordinarily well. So that's the medicine which Arjuna gets from Krishna. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Kutastva kashmalam idam Vishame samupasthitam Anarya jushtama Akirti karam Arjuna. The blessed Lord said, when so Arjuna has this weakness, not to be entertained by honorable men, Aryans, nor conducive to the attainment of heaven, leading to ill fame, come on you at this crisis. So in this time of crisis, literally in the middle of a battlefield, but that crisis is always crisis for us. It is actually. We don't recognize it. We get comfortable with life. But it is crisis for us. But in the middle of this crisis, where has this weakness come upon you? Kutaha means from where, which means it's not natural to you. You are not like this. You are resolute. You are noble. You are brave. He says, Anarya Jushtam, not worthy of an Aryan. Remember, Aryan here does not mean a race. It as a terrible muddle has been created by the Nazis. First of all, the racism of an Aryan, I was just reading, it is mentioned in the Rig Veda. What is an Aryan is defined there. A one who follows dharma, ethics, an ethical lifestyle. One who is enlightened in the sense of jnani, not well-read, but in the sense of being enlightened. Not just spiritually enlightened, it just means enlightened in life. Jnani. And the one who excels in nobility. So that is an Aryan. Nothing to do with a race as such. Though the Vedic people were called Aryans, racially, but here it does not mean race. So it is noble. For a noble person, this is not right for a noble person. What this weakness you're entertaining. The Nazis, for example, most infamously, they made a horrible mess with the symbol, the swastika. The swastika it's a bad word nowadays because of the Nazis, but it's a Sanskrit word, and it means, of all things, the auspicious. So they took the symbol. Luckily, they didn't use it as it is. They twisted it. So at least that's just a saving grace. But for the rest of the world, it's become a symbol of evil. But it literally means a symbol of that which is auspicious. Anyhow, Anaryam. Is it almost the same? If we write it in English, it would exactly be the same. Anaryan. Anaryam. Anaryam means not Aryan, not worthy of being entertained by Aryans. This kind of weakness. And then he says, Aswargyam, not worthy of, it will not take you to heaven. Akirtikaram, not conducive to your good name in this life. Three things Krishna has said. First of all, the noblest of people do the right thing, not because of anything else, but because it is the right thing. An Aryan, he says, a noble person will do something right because it is the thing to do, not because it will get him any particular advantage. So, literally it's this. Shankaracharya in his introduction to Brahma Sutra Bhashya says, Pashvadivi avisheshat, in Sanskrit. What it means is, there really is no clear distinction between animals and even the most learned of men. What does he mean by that? He says, just as, the example he gives there, Shankaracharya, just as a cow is tempted by a man holding juicy green grass in front of it, and it goes towards that man. And another man holding a stick looks at it threateningly, and the cow thinks it's going to hurt me, and it runs away. Even so, men who ought to know better, they are tempted by certain things in the world, and they are scared of other things in the world. And because of that, they do not do what is right, and we do not refrain from what is bad. Why do we do evil? It's either temptation or fear. Nobody wants to be bad. But then why do we? Because we know, when we know something is wrong, and yet we go ahead and do it, it's because we have been tempted. Or we have been forced by fear. Something is there, either fear or temptation. And so the noble person, the Aryan, is one who is not tempted into doing wrong things, or nor is scared away from doing the right thing. So that is one. And one step below this is a person who is a good person, a religious person, who would like to be a good person so that he can go to heaven after death. Aswargyam. Do the right thing so that you are rewarded with heaven after death. That was the motivation for the Vedic people at that time. That follow dharma, you will go to heaven after death. Follow adharma, you will be punished after death. So this is a second. This is actually one step down. The noblest of people do things because it's right, not because it will take them to heaven. But suppose that does not motivate you. Now here is this second thing, that if you do not do this duty, this is not conducive to your attainment of heaven after death. If that also does not motivate you, who knows if there is heaven or not, who cares? Then if that does not motivate you, the third thing he says, it is not conducive to your good name, to your reputation in this world itself, in this life. Immediately you will be subjected to calumny that you are a coward, you did not do your duty, they have a word for it. Here we have a right appropriate word, loser, they will say. So they'll call you a loser. So three, Anaryam, this is not something that a noble person would do. Second is, it is not going to take you to heaven if you go on like this, and it's going to ruin your reputation as a noble person, as a great warrior. Samupasthitam. The word samupasthitam means not only has it come upon you, it has taken possession of you. See, there's something which might occur to us. Do I do this or do I not do this? But we don't speak about it. It occurs to us and I speak about it, but we don't do it. It occurs to us and we start talking about it and it takes over, it determines our actions. And that's what has happened to Arjuna. He's not only thinking about quitting, he's speaking about it and defending it, and he has sat down in the middle of the battlefield. He's thrown his bow and arrow down. So it has taken possession of you. One more. By this time, Arjuna must have been shocked. He thought he had given out a very nice defense of his decision. And Krishna seems to be saying just the opposite. Third verse. Klaivyam masma gama partha. Masma gama partha. Naita tvayupapadyate. Naita tvayupapadyate. Kshudram hridaya daurbalyam. Kshudram hridaya daurbalyam. Tyaktvottishta parantapa. Tyaktvottishta parantapa. So, O Partha, yield not to unmanliness, it is not worthy of you. Shaking of this mean faint-heartedness. Arise, O scorcher of foes. Krishna says to Arjuna, a new name, Partha. This comes from Pritha. His mother is Kunti. Arjuna's mother is Kunti, the queen. And one of her names is Pritha, daughter of Prithu. So Pritha. And so Partha is the son of Pritha. Another name for Arjuna is Kaunteya. Again and again Krishna uses it. It also means son of Kunti. So Partha means son of Pritha. Kaunteya means son of Kunti, and Kunti and Pritha both are the same. Now, actually I've got some numbers for you. In the whole of the Bhagavad Gita, actually Krishna uses the name Partha for Arjuna 38 times. So somebody is bothered to count. 38 times. And he uses the name Kaunteya, son of Kunti. It means the same thing. 24 times. This is not without significance, because the names which are used, they point to something. He is pointing out to Arjuna who he is, and what he is doing right now does not at all match what he is supposed to be doing. He is a warrior, one of the most famous warriors, and the son of a warrior queen, Kunti. So by mentioning his mother, he points out Pritha or Kunti, points out who is. See, if you read the original Mahabharata, the original verses, beautiful. I was just reading. Before the war started, Krishna asks Kunti, because they're going into the war, maybe she will never see her children again. He says to Kunti, and what, O queen, do I say to your sons who are about to plunge into this terrible storm of war? Kunti says, to my sons, O Krishna, say this: the time for which a Kshatriya, a warrior prince is born, that time is upon us. That time is upon us. That time is here, for which a warrior is born. That reminds you of those stories of the Spartans, where the Spartan mothers would say to their children that go out, to their sons, they go out into this battle and return with your shield or upon it. That means, with your shield means you're standing. Upon it means they would carry the dead bodies back on the shield. Kunti says does not say to Krishna that protect my children and make sure that they come back alive. No, she says, tell them that I said, the time for which you were born, a Kshatriya, a warrior prince is born, that time is upon us. Now to the son of such a mother, he's calling him with his mother's name. Partha, O Partha. And what does he say? Klaivyam masma gama. Do not be paralyzed into inactivity. Klaivyam means neutered. Do not be paralyzed into inactivity. You are a resolute warrior. Naita tvayupapadyate. The word succeeding Partha, son of Pritha, son of such a warrior queen. Next word is, this does not befit you. You see the juxtaposition. What should you do? What do I do then? This mean faint-heartedness, this smallness, this pettiness, what Arjuna was putting forth as goodness, I'm a nice person. That he calls meanness, faint-heartedness, smallness. And he says, give it up, get rid of it. Hridaya daurbalyam, faintness, faint-heartedness. Literally it means faint-heartedness, weak of heart. Kshudram means small, mean, petty, small. Get rid of that and rise up. Stand up, rise up. And then the next word he uses, he addresses Arjuna, Parantapa, O scorcher of foes, O one who is a terror to his foes. So look at the language Krishna is using. This verse is regarded by Swami Vivekananda. This is one of the preliminary verses before the teaching. But Swami Vivekananda regards it as one of the central teachings of Bhagavad Gita. That before any kind of spirituality, any yoga, any religion, anything, you know what is required first? A willingness on my part to change. My life can be better. I am willing to take action. Show me how. Unless the person is willing to learn and change, wisdom of the world is there. Great masters are there. Wonderful teachings which have transformed lives for centuries across civilizations. They are all there. Our heritage is there. But unless I am willing to change, it won't work. I've already told you how Krishna actually tried to convince Duryodhana to change. Somebody asked, why didn't he teach the bad guys? Then he would have prevented the war. Why tell all this to a person who's good anyway, Arjuna? The problem is, a guy is a bad guy because of that, not because inherently anybody is bad. It's because not willing to change. Absolutely convinced I'm right. Who are you to teach me? So Krishna actually tried to teach the Duryodhana. This is not right. This is not dharma. And Duryodhana's famous response. Just a minute, Krishna. Don't tell me what is right and wrong. Because I know what is right and I know what is wrong. I mean, look at the honesty of the man. He doesn't justify it. He says, I know what I'm doing is wrong. And I know what you want me to do is right. Then you say, yes, so in that case? My problem is not that. It's not that I don't know. I know. But I can't stop myself from doing what is wrong. It's either so tempting, out of anger or lust or greed. I can't stop it. And what is right, I don't feel like doing it. It's the eternal human problem. Socrates said, what is to know the good is to be good. Immediately we say, no, that's not true. Actually, Socrates is right. If the human mind and personality were in its noblest condition, what is right, the moment you know it, you would do it. But our minds are not fit. We have ruined this instrument which God has given us by dumping trash in it, by conditioning, by prejudice, by desires, by lust and greed and conditioning. So that we know what is right. Look at it. I admit I know. I can't do it. I admit this is bad. I can't stop. So there must be something wrong. Why is my intellect at war with the rest of my personality? What knows, part of me knows this is right, the other part won't listen. So the problem is in here. It's not in the teaching. It's not in morality or religion or ethics. That's why Krishna says, you have to stand up, shake off this meanness, this smallness. Swami Vivekananda said, the old religion said, one who does not believe in God is an atheist. The new religion says one who does not believe in himself is an atheist. Believe in himself means, I am good, I can change, I can make my life better. This is the essential, the first condition to any kind of spirituality, religion, morals, philosophy, whatever. Practically, if you want to make a change. This was said to me by a monk, again in the Himalayas. The example he used was a very rural kind of, village kind of example, but very telling. He said, in the villages, we who have lived in villages, we know that when a farmer, when he sees a calf which is ill, If the calf is trying to get up, you can make it stand on its legs and it will recover, you know that. But if the calf which is not trying to get up, no matter how much you try to lift it up, it will come crashing down again. If the poor thing is struggling, you know you can help it. It cannot stand up on its own. The farmers know this. They know it's a very bad sign when the calf has given up. Even when you try to put it on its legs, it won't stand, it won't work. You can't get it on its legs. So that's exactly what is happening here. Krishna wants Arjuna to take up, to decide to change. Then Krishna can help. And this is what we must do. This faith in ourselves. I can change my life for the better. Partha, son of Pritha. Arjuna reacts. So next few verses are Arjuna's reaction. We will read it quickly because I want to start the teachings of Krishna from the next class onwards. So up to the next few verses we'll read together. Basically what Arjuna will do is he reacts with indignation. Like that Swammi said when he read that one-line reply from the senior teacher that remember other people are putting up with you. His first reaction was anger and tears in his eyes. You can imagine Arjuna. He is like, haven't you heard what I was saying? How can I fight against these people? They are my teachers. All of which he was ready to do until that moment. They are my teachers, they are my relatives, and what's the use of fighting this war? I don't want a kingdom, and so on. He repeats those very quickly here. Arjuna vacha Katham bhishmam aham sankhye Katham bhishmam aham sankhye Dronam cha madhusudana Dronam cha madhusudana Ishubhi pratiyotsyami Ishubhi patiyotsyami Pujarha varisudana Pujarha varisudana. Arjuna said, O Madhusudana, how can I fight in battle with arrows? How can I shoot arrows at the revered Bhishma, our grandsire, at the revered master Drona who taught us, we learned how to shoot arrows and fight from their teacher Drona. All the princes were taught by Drona. So how can we fight against them? How can I shoot arrows at these revered persons who are worthy of respect and worship, to whom I cannot utter an impolite word? You are asking me to shoot them with arrows. Then 5th verse. Gurun hatva hi mahanubhavan Gurun hatva hi mahanubhavan Shreyo bhoktum bhaikshyam api haloke Shreyo bhoktum bhaikshyam api haloke Hatvartha kamangstu gurun ihaiva Hatvartha kamangstu gurun ihaiva Bhunjiya bhogan rudhira pradigdhan Bhunjiya bhogan rudhira pradigdhan. He actually makes a very nice case. I would be convinced. Krishna is not. He's a tough cookie. What does he say? That without killing these nobles, these elders, it's much better to live on alms. You see, if he says, how can I fight against them? Then the immediate answer to that would be, then you are done for. If you do not defeat your enemies, they are going to wipe you out. You may have all these qualms about it. They don't. They have come here to kill you. So his answer to that, Arjuna's answer to that is, it's much better to, not fight, and I'll become a beggar. I'll beg for my food and live. See, he's a prince of a royal house. He knows if he does not fight, he will not get the kingdom. He will not get his due. He's all right, I'll be a beggar. It's much better to live on alms in the world rather than kill these great people. If I kill them and then I know I deserve it, it's my birthright, the kingdom and everything. I get it all and I fulfill my desires, but they'll be drenched with the blood of these revered people. How can I enjoy it? Rudhira pradigdhan, it will be drenched in the blood. At this point, most of us would yeah, you're right, I never thought of that. Krishna is a tough cookie though. Then Arjuna goes on. Na chaitad vidma kataranno gariyo. Na chaitad vidma kataranno gariyo. Yadva jayema yadivano jayeyu. Yadva jayema yadivano jayeyu. Yaneva hatva na jijivishama. Yaneva hatva na jijivishama. Teva sthita pramukhe dhartra rashtra. Teva sthita pramukhe dhartra rashtra. And he goes on in the same strain. He says, Arjuna says, if I fight this war, I don't know really what would be better. What is better? If you fight a war, you would like to win. He says, no, I don't know. Is winning better or losing better? Because isn't it better that we are killed in this war? Because if we win this war, then he says, then we would have killed those, our own kinsmen, without whom why would we want to live? We live for the family, and we're killing the family, wiping them out, and I get the kingdom. It's an empty victory. So, is it better to win this war or better to lose this war? I really don't know. And he knows that he is not making much sense. So in the next verse, he admits for the first time. It's very interesting. Till this point, he has been arguing his case that I'm right. Let's stop. Let's go back home. Whatever will happen, will happen. Now he says, I'm confused. I understand. He's honest about it. I know my weakness, that I have lost my resolution. I don't know what's right and wrong anymore. So the 7th verse, for the first time he admits this. Karpanya dosha upahata swabhava. Karpanya dosha upahata swabhava. Prichhami tvam dharma sammudha cheta. Prichhami tvam dharma sammudha cheta. Yat shreyasyat nishchitam bruhitan me. Yat shreyasyat nishchitam bruhitan me. Shishyasteham shadhimam tvam prapannam. Shishyasteham shadhimam tvam prapannam. For the first time he says, I'm your disciple. Teach me. He has not said this earlier. Why teach me? Because I am overcome with Karpanya dosha literally means smallness. Kripana, the Sanskrit word, means a miser, small, petty. I am overcome with mean-mindedness, smallness. Dharma sammudha cheta. It means my intellect is clouded. I don't know what's right or wrong anymore. What should I do? I am asking you. For the first time he's asking. What am I asking? Yat shreya. What's right? What's the right thing to do? Bruhitan me, tell me. Why should you tell me? Shishyasteham, I am thy disciple. Shadhimang, teach me. Tvam prapannam, I take refuge in thee. You see, any spiritual path, it starts with first acknowledgement. I'm not here to discuss philosophy with you. I'm here to learn from you. You can ask questions, but the question is also part of learning. So here he says, Prapannam, I take refuge. Then the whole Buddhism starts with Buddham sharanam gacchami, Dhammam sharanam gacchami, Sangham sharanam gacchami. I take refuge in the Buddha, in the Dhamma, the teaching, and in the community of spiritual community, the Sangha. So here for the first time Arjuna admits, I need to learn, I need to change, and you can teach me, I take refuge in you. See, Krishna never teaches like that. Krishna doesn't put up Vedanta class on the signboard and the website. You can come and I'm going to teach you Vedanta. No. Unless you are asked, Krishna would never teach. He doesn't advertise. And you have to chase him down and catch hold of him and say, I'm willing to listen to you seriously. Then you teach. I'll tell you a little secret here. There's a tradition among some people, those who study the Gita. This verse, 7th verse, what they do is, when they are in confusion, unhappy, they want help, they repeat this verse in a prayerful attitude to God before going to sleep. And the idea is God comes in your dreams and shows you the way. It's a, well, we can say it's an interesting practice. You repeat this verse several times with a prayerful attitude, then go to sleep, and then you get guidance. 8th. Nahi prapashyami mamapanudyat. Nahi prapashyami mamapanudyat. Yatshokam shanamindriyanam. Yatshokam shanamindriyanam. Avapya bhumau asapatnariddham. Avapya bhumau asapatnariddham. Rajyam suranam apichadhipatyam. Rajyam suranam apichadhipatyam. Arjuna goes on, I do not indeed see that which would remove this grief of mine, that is utterly drying up my senses. That means I'm freezing, basically, what we might say today. Even if I were to attain in this world a kingdom without rivals and prosperous, and even lordship over the gods. Suppose you guarantee you're going to win this battle, and you're going to get this wonderful kingdom. Or maybe you lose the battle, or whatever it is, and you go to heaven after death. In both cases, I still don't see the point in fighting this battle. I mean, I'm overcome with sorrow and unhappiness. Having said this, what did Arjuna do? 9th verse. Sanjay Vacha. Evam muktva rishikesham. Evam muktva rishikesham. Gudakesha parantapa. Gudakesha parantapa. Nayotsya iti govindam. Nayotsya iti govindam. Uktva tushnim babhuvaha. Uktva tushnim babhuvaha. So Sanjay, the one who's narrating all this to the blind king, he says, having said this to Krishna, Arjuna, here is another name of Arjuna, Gudakesha, the conqueror of sleep. Arjuna, the one who is a terror to his foes, he said to Govinda. Govinda is another name of Krishna. So don't get confused. There are only two here, Krishna and Arjuna. He said, I shall not fight. Na yotsya. And then he kept quiet. He fell silent. Then what happened? The 10th verse. Tamuvacha rishikesha. Tamuvacha rishikesha. Prahasanniva bharata. Prahasanniva bharata. Senayor ubhayor madhye. Senayor ubhayor madhye. Vishidantam idam vachaha. Vishidantam idam vachaha. Beautiful verse which says, O king, O king means Sanjay is telling the blind king, O king, to the one who was sorrowing, full of sorrow, that is Arjuna, was sitting quietly in between the two assembled armies. Look at the grand setting of the teaching. It's one of the most dramatic settings possible. In between the two armies, Krishna spoke these words to Arjuna, as if smiling. Not at all tense, not at all annoyed, not at all eager, relaxed and smiling. He's supposed to be the ideal of karma yoga. Swami Vivekananda points out the icon we have of the chariot in the battlefield and Krishna holding the reins of the horses. The 5 horses symbolize the 5 sense organs, and Arjuna is the soul, the Jivatma sitting there, and Krishna is the guide. Swami Vivekananda points out, notice how in all the depictions, in the midst of this tremendous action, dynamic situation, Krishna is so relaxed and smiling. Swami Vivekananda said, this is the ideal of yoga. Eternal calm in the midst of intense action. And in the midst of eternal calm, when the world is quiet and you're alone and all, mind doesn't become dull or sleepy. The mind works like a blast furnace inside. Your mind is working under control when you're thinking deeply or meditating or whatever, though outside it's all quiet and calm. And when the outside is so busy, Manhattan. I think once Swami Vivekananda gave the example of a street in New York in those days. He was here in 1894. And your mind is calm as if you're meditating in a Himalayan cave. Is that possible? Yes, it is. After this, 11th verse onwards, the teaching starts. Again, look, idam vachaha, the words, these words were spoken, emphasizing the real teaching starts now. So 11th verse onwards, we shall see what Krishna teaches, but we know the central teaching of all of Gita, all of Vedanta, this one truth which you find here, the divinity within us, the unknown, the infinitude within us is revealed by Krishna. I was just reading Thoreau, Henry David Thoreau, when he goes into retreat, Walden. In his diaries, he says, I begin my days by studying the Bhagavad Gita. He writes, I'm into contact with the dawn of an early civilization. I'm paraphrasing. It's a light of an early civilization. A mind wider and greater than we have in these modern times. We are brought into contact. A wisdom so ancient, so vast and broad. He writes, so beautifully he writes, in Walden Pond. He says, I begin my day studying the Bhagavad Gita. Very good. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Shri Ram Krishna Arpanamastu. Sri Ramakrishna, by the way, did not think much of book learning. But one book he approved of was the Bhagavad Gita. He literally said, Gita is a fine book, you should read the Gita. He said. In Bengali, khub boi, porbe. It's a good book. All right. You just keep the